Morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is full steam ahead. As much as many people in Zimbabwe now can see that's, that this vision 2030 is a mirage. The truth of the matter is, those in power see it differently. Mnangagwa is determined to stay in power beyond 2028. Zanu PF has always managed to impose itself on the nation, starting from way back in 1980. As much as Zanu PF, like all the other parties to the Lancaster House talks, agreed that the upcoming elections in 1980 will be held when there's peace. Both Zapu and Zanu PF agreed that they will withdraw the freedom fighter operatives from the field during the campaign period and send them to assembly points. They agreed to that. Then the left went back to Zimbabwe, Mozambique, some of them. But by the time they got there, they'd already got a plan. They were not going to risk losing power by losing the elections. So instead of withdrawing all their operatives from the field, they left a number of them. And the message they were to give to the electorate was that if Zanu PF does not win the elections, the Bush war would continue. The people voted to end the Bush war. And one can say that was the beginning of the end of the ordinary Zimbabwean having a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Because from there on, Zanu PF would come back and make further demands on the people, compromising their rights and freedoms for the sake of consolidating its own power. In fact, 3 years after the winning the 1980 elections, Zanu PF launched the now infamous Gukurahundi massacre. The primary purpose of the Gukurahundi was to force Zanu PF's main challenger to power, PF Zapu, to give up his political ambitions and join Zanu PF. And the Gukurahundi massacre did not stop until 1987, when PF Zapu leaders signed the Unit Accord. And if anyone thought Zanu PF, Mugabe, and his cronies will be happy with that, they were wrong. Because Mugabe used that to launch the de facto one-party state. It has been an endless cycle. The nation was told that anyone who threatened the unity. Anyone who threatened Zanu PF's hold on power was threatening national unity. And so the nation was forced to accept the de facto one-party state, Zanu PF, as the only party of government. This has been a nightmare. Mugabe even managed to brainwash the hierarchy in the army and other institutions, the police, the CIO, and so forth, to give up, to become Zanu PF in all but name. And so top brass in the army, the police, the CIO came out to endorse this one-party state idea. In 2008, when Zanu PF felt the serious threat to its hold on power, the army commanders came out and publicly announced to the world that they would not support anyone winning the elections who was not a Zanu PF leader. Being president of Zimbabwe was a straitjacket, said Shinavashi. Here is Shinavashi speaking.
We wish to make it very clear to all Zimbabwean citizens that the security organization will only stand in support of those political leaders that will pursue Zimbabwe's value, traditions, belief, for which thousands of lives were lost in pursuit of Zimbabwe's hard-won independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the national interest. To this end, let it be known that the highest office on the land is a straitjacket.
Because that was nonsense. If the people in a free, fair, and credible election voted for somebody who was not a Zanu PF leader, why should he or she be considered a threat to the nation's interest? If one was accept, okay, there may be such a person. If somebody is guilty of treason, of betraying the country, surely that's why we have got the courts. That person should be arrested, brought before the courts, and the evidence be produced so that the courts and the rest of the people can hear it for themselves. It is unbelievable that anyone would expect somebody who had been charged and the evidence produced to show that he was a traitor, the people will still go ahead and vote for such a person. And yet that is what we are being told here. It's shocking how Zanu PF has brainwashed all the key people in the various state institutions to promote its selfish agenda of imposing the one-party state. Let me say it here and repeat it again. Mnangagwa rigged the 2023 elections. SADC and the AU election observers dismissed the whole process as flawed and illegal. And yet Mnangagwa turned around and dismissed them with contempt. Ever since the 2023, Mnangagwa has been pushing this Vision 2030 agenda, which is really nothing but his attempt to stay in power beyond the term limits which would apply since the 2023 elections. He is determined to stay in power. And so he's coming up with all manner of excuses to justify that. The people of Zimbabwe know that this Vision 2030 is a mirage. The country is going nowhere. The country is being held to ransom. And yet he's determined. The other day, I discussed an audio where Zanu PF was revealing how it's going to push this 2030 agenda. The party is now saying it's not going to go to the elections in 2028. All it wants to do is extend Mnangagwa's stay in office by a further 2 years. The party has set its lawyers to task to look at the law, see where there is any legal way of doing that. The truth of the matter is there is no legal way of doing that. But in a country where all state institutions are captured, it is quite possible that they will find a way. And it is not surprising that today we are looking at a situation where Mnangagwa is threatening all those who are daring to oppose his Vision 2030. Here is him speaking on that issue.
Will not stop our development plans and programs because of the noise from some little boys. They will continue making that noise, but we shall continue to move on. But I warn anybody who may want to be nonsensical and bring chaos in this country, we are ready for any chaos, to deal with any chaos. Whoever who preach hate speech shall be responsible for their hate speech. Our prisons are not full. We want peace. We want unity. Those who do not disagree with that, but do so quietly and peacefully. Then, tishafamba tose murugare nokuirana. Asukata besha mkono tinokuveza.
Here is a regime that has ruled the country through fear, and ignorance. The carrot and the stick. And indeed, the regime has wielded the stick more often than not as the more reliable tool to get what it wants. After 45 years of rigged elections, we've now come to the point where the regime is trying to change, to take away the little power that people still have, to have some say in the governance of the country in the form of these regular elections. Elections have been rigged, so their vote, the people's vote, has been largely compromised. But now the regime is trying to move in to end this practice of it having to face the electorate and rig the elections. If Mnangagwa succeeds in this move to grant himself another 2 years, it will be a serious coup in terms of political power to the people. Because, of course, if he can extend it by 2 years, what's there to stop him extending it by 5 years? Without reference to the electorate. That is the reality we are facing. I think the people should have reached now the point where they realize from history and from our own history that whenever you try to appease a dictator, you should know that you will never succeed. Because tyrants have got the habit of demanding an inch. You give them an inch and they'll take a foot. And tomorrow they'll be back. And this time they'll be demanding a foot. You give them a foot and they'll take a yard. And they'll be back again and again and again. Right now, the people of Zimbabwe have lost all meaningful political say in the governance of the country. The country is a failed state, sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss. And yet, we are all sitting helpless, twiddling our thumbs. Because after 45 years of systematic erosion of the people's freedoms and rights, this Zanu PF truly is ruling with an iron fist. The threat that Mnangagwa has made there is not an empty threat. And yet, the people should also realize that even back in 1980, when Zanu PF threatened that the Bush war would continue if the party does not win power, the people should have had the alarm bells ringing in their heads, because they should have realized that the more power you give to a dictator, the more you'll use it to demand even more power, more dictatorial power from you. They won the 1980 elections. 3 years later, they used that as the launching pad to launch the after years of the Gukurahundi, with over 20,000 people dead, the Unity Accord was signed. And Zanu PF, you would think, would have been contained at that point. No, they were not. They used the Unity Accord to justify the imposition of the de facto one-party state. The demands have never stopped. But there is a time when the people have got to realize that appeasing the dictator will get them nowhere. And I think in Zimbabwe, we have reached that point. People should realize that Mnangagwa rigged the 2023 elections. He is president, but he shouldn't be president. And you would think he was content with that. No, he is not. He wants to stay in beyond the 2-term limit. And this issue of, oh, I'm just extending it by 2 years. Don't be fooled by that. Because you'll extend it by 2 years. And if, as the time gets nearer to the 2 years, what is there to stop him extending it by another 3 years? After all, elections were supposed to be held in 2028 and then 2033. These demands are never going to stop. And I think in this particular case, people must stand firm and demand that Mnangagwa is not legitimate, and his move to extend his illegitimacy is totally unacceptable. The threats about small boys making a lot of noise is to be expected. But let me reassure you, as the economy continues to sink, the people of Zimbabwe's suffering will only get worse. This is the time to make a stand. And it is a stand for what is right. And it is a stand that anyone with half a brain knows they must make. Because the idea of giving up to appease him is foolish. Because we all know he will only be coming back to demand some more. So saying no now makes more sense than trying to do it tomorrow, when he has given himself even more power. So I would like to repeat, Mnangagwa is determined to extend his stay in power, illegitimate as it is, beyond 2028. I think we should make our stand very clear that he should not even be in power right now, because he rigged the 2023 elections. And the idea that he can extend his illegitimate mandate is an outrage. think people of Zimbabwe should think about it. We should have made our stand a long time ago, but it is never too late to make the stand, particularly when you know you've got a tyrant whose appetite for power and wealth is insatiable. Give in to Mnangagwa today, tomorrow you'll be back demanding even more. You may just as well stand and say no now, and about time too. Thank you.